So, leaving the stadium, of course, always disappointing to lose a game 3-0, but against Leverkusen, who beat Union Berlin 5-0. Yeah, it's a different team, but Colin Hudson-Odoi is out there. It's incredible to see kind of a hybrid MLS2 team, guys that were out there, like, with the development squad a month ago. Go out there and actually hold their own at times against Bayer Leverkusen. Josh Ara, who I thought was phenomenal. I think he, for someone who has never had MLS experience, he just has grown leaps and bounds this year. Got some good answers from the press conference. Have a ride up soon, and we'll talk when I get home. Alright folks, here I am back at my parents' house in their guest bedroom. Hopefully the background isn't too jarring. I'll be back home soon, but I had to take a day to really defrost from Wednesday night. And honestly, just taking a day to kind of think about it, to put it in perspective of St. Louis soccer history, and really St. Louis immigrant history if you think about it. This stadium opening, this kind of sneak preview, as Luch Pfannenstiel would call it, is kind of a tribute to the city, a love letter to the city. It starts with kind of the pillars of Mill Valley that adorn the southwest gate of the stadium, paying homage, paying tribute to the black families that lived there in the 1950s before the neighborhood was raised for urban development. And it's a huge step forward for the club, for the city, for the downtown area to acknowledge this. It was made in conjunction with the Greenways project, in conjunction with Harris-Stowe University, through a East St. Louis artist, and it's a good reminder to have that right there. If you walk to the center gate, you have to walk through it, and you have to kind of have that reminder of what was here before. And I think it's important because city obviously has a brilliant black culture that sometimes, most of the time, gets swept under the rug. With that, you also have a brilliant immigrant culture as well. It started from, my family was part of the first wave of immigrants that came to St. Louis in the 1950s. We came from the Alsace-Lorraine region of Germany. We've lived in St. Louis ever since, outside of me being in Kansas City. I'm the first Horniger to leave St. Louis. How crazy is that? To the Irish immigrants, over 78% of the population of St. Louis in the 1850s was either German or Irish immigrants by that point. You had Italian immigrants, all the way to the Bosnian immigration that so famously St. Louis hosts the most Bosnians outside of Bosnia that live here, that make up the cultural fabric, all the way to the Afghan refugees that arrived in the city this past year. You see that with the flags in the supporter section. You see that with how cognizant the city is to its cultural roots, from Southeast Asians to the Mexican immigrant population that we have here. It's a cliche, especially in America, but St. Louis really is kind of a melting pot of all these diverse cultures that sometimes when you think of St. Louis, it doesn't necessarily get brought up as much. So what they do with this stadium, what they've done with the stadium, is such a kind of love letter to the city, a love letter to the cultures that made the city. You gotta love it. When you think about kind of soccer in St. Louis, of course you think about the kids from the Hill who made the U.S. soccer team, the U.S. national team in the 1950s, the team that beat England, that was comprised of so many St. Louisans from one specific neighborhood. You also have the Bosnian representation. We sold out a Bosnian-Argentina international game at Busch Stadium back in 2013. It had over 30,000 people there to watch Bosnia take on Argentina, and the crowd was largely Bosnian. You could tell by, if you watch that game, if you watch the highlights, you can tell by the reactions there. I'm in awe just kind of thinking about it. It really was a dream come true for me, and I'm sure, anyone that's kind of grew up in St. Louis as a soccer fan, not having professional soccer for so long after the St. Louis Stars of the NASL went bankrupt in the 70s and the Steamers of the 80s, and having such a dearth of American professional soccer for so long. Of course, St. Louis was kind of a bargaining chip for the MLS for a long time, ever since Chicago entered the league as we want to put a team there, and teams everywhere would use St. Louis as kind of that bargaining chip whenever they wanted a new stadium or wanted something else from their city or from the league. That, of course, culminates with Real Salt Lake almost moving to St. Louis in 2009. Fresh off the heels of that, AC St. Louis started up in 2010 as the, quote, first professional team back in St. Louis. And while AC St. Louis was a complete fucking mess, it did achieve that goal of bringing professional soccer back to St. Louis. Professional soccer to CITYPARK, which would eventually be the home of St. Louis FC in 2015, to the newly formed USL. Of course, St. Louis FC proved that there was a hardcore contingent of soccer fans in St. Louis, even if CITYPARK was not necessarily the ideal place to watch a game, the ideal place to sell out a game. So now we have this bright, shiny downtown stadium that sold out a friendly against Bayer Leverkusen this week. And it's important to remember everything that came before it and just how much this city stands behind this team that has kind of done all the right things, reaching out to the culture that came before it. That's kind of my takeaway from this game. As, you know, maybe disappointing it is to lose your first game in your big stadium, losing 3-0 to Leverkusen is nothing to really be sad about, especially because I think Xabi Alonso was a little bit upset with how his team played. And, you know, they probably should be beating a hybrid MLS-2 team by more than 3-0, but that's probably a commentary on the conditions of the game, not the team itself. Anyway, thank you so much for coming along this ride with me, this little bit of a mini vlog into the game. I wrote a little piece about this that I'll post down in the show notes. Of course, if this is your first time on my channel, make sure you like this video, make sure you subscribe to me for more soccer content. World Cup coming up. I'm going to put out a Women's Super League video over the weekend with Manchester United and Arsenal squaring off to really kind of crystallize the WSL picture, right? And, you know, it'll be important to watch as the World Cup rolls on. I'm going to be writing about the World Cup for Dimers, so follow my pages at HornickerJustin on Twitter and Instagram, Soccer Talk Lads on Twitter as well, and of course, Talkin' Soccer here and on TikTok. So, thank you all so much. I'll talk to you all so soon.